Chapter 1. The Awakening. Marcus Webb has lost track of time. It could be weeks, it could be months. Time flows differently here, in the absolute darkness where sunlight will never reach. Here, there is only blackness, the sound of water dripping, and the sensation of consciousness in his mind slowly fading, like a light bulb burning out. His name is Captain Marcus Webb, or it was. Now, the only thing he knows is pain. Pain in places where a body should no longer have sensation. He can feel them thin filaments, something wrapped around his arms, legs, torso. They are pulling, stretched tight, as if they are filing through his skin. He tries to open his eyes. Nothing but darkness. He tries to listen. Only a sound like breathing, wet, rhythmic, as if blood is flowing through some massive organ. Or perhaps that is its heart, or his. He can no longer tell the difference. He tries to move. His body does not respond. Or perhaps it has, but he is no longer connected to it. Maybe he is already dead. Maybe this sensation is all that remains of a soul trapped somewhere. A memory begins to form. An image flickers, as if projected through water glass. Asterisk, 72 hours earlier. Asterisk. Webb's team consisted of 12 Green Berets, all carefully selected for deep underground reconnaissance. Their mission: investigate a cave system beneath the Song Tay Mountains, a range on the border between Tibet and China. Satellites had detected an unusual signal emanating from a depth of approximately 2,000 meters too deep for any standard geological activity to explain. Command called it Anomaly 7. They didn't tell Webb what it was, but he knew. Webb had enough ops under his belt to recognize when the truth was being hidden. And they never hid the truth unless it was something more than geological. Webb's team had landed in a concealed valley, 10 miles from the signal coordinates. They had hiked through darkness into an old cave system dating back to prehistoric times. This system had been surveyed by geologists 3 times before. 3 times, they reported that what they found was normal. Old caves. Nothing more. But this time, Webb felt different. Not because the cave system had changed, because his body had changed. He could sense something, a cold feeling on his skin, like ice water flowing through his veins. Presence, hard to articulate, but it was there, as if the cave itself was warning him. Cap, what are you hearing? That was Reeves, one of the youngest team members. 21, from Texas, an excellent soldier but without much experience with things like this. Nothing, Webb said, just neural pain. But it was not neural pain. They descended for 800 meters, following signals on their equipment. The cave began to widen from a narrow fissure to large chambers with high ceilings. The walls had a different structure, not natural rock formations, but walls that had been cut, carved. Anyone else seeing this? That was Garcia, a tactical signals officer. This isn't natural, it's man-made, Jensen said. He was the team's geological specialist. Cut that way with primitive tools, thousands of years ago, but Webb knew something was wrong. The cuts were too clean, too uniform. Whatever cut these walls was not a primitive tool. It was something else. The team descended further. 1,000 meters, 1,200, 1,500. With each step, the cold feeling on Webb's skin grew stronger. His body wanted to turn back. He knew that. He could feel the fear from the other team members, sharp breathing, silence deeper than usual. Then they saw it. Something massive, a structure lying in the center of a cavern at least 300 meters long. It was not rock. It was not wood. It was made of metal or something like metal, oxidized, covered with a green patina, covered in the dust and water of countless years. Mother of God, Reeves whispered. Everyone, halt, Webb ordered. He stepped forward, took the flashlight from his headlamp and shone it on the structure. It was larger as he got closer, perhaps a ship, or something like a ship, but no, it did not have the shape of a ship. It was all angles, sharp angles and curved surfaces, like a massive skeletal framework made of metal. Webb stepped closer. He could feel heat nearby, not warmth, but something. As if the structure was emitting a kind of energy, enveloping him. Cap, what is that? Garcia had come beside him, her rifle pointed downward. She was an extremely tense person, but she felt it too. He could hear a note of fear in her voice. I don't know, Webb said, but we need to report this to command. He activated his radio. The signal was choppy, not good at this depth, but it was the best they had. Command, we have Anomaly 7. It's not a signal. It's a structure. Something massive. Requesting guidance. Static. Then a voice from far away. crackling with interference. Copy that, Recon 7. Continue exploration. We're routing our satellites for more detailed imagery from above. No direct contact with the structure. Do you hear? Understood, Command. No direct contact. But as Webb spoke those words, he felt something, a vibration from the structure, as if it had heard him, as if it had been activated by the very sound of this conversation. Lights began to illuminate across the cavern, lights like those that had been dark for thousands of years, but now they began to glow a faint green luminescence, spreading from above the structure and falling down like rain. "Everyone, evacuate now!" Webb shouted. "Retreat to the exit!" But something had emerged from the structure. Not human, not animal, something else. Something with form, but not any form Webb had ever seen. It moved fast, too fast, and it caught Reeves before he could run. A scream, long, prolonged, filled with absolute agony. Then, silence. Only a dark streak of something that might be blood, or what remained of Reeves. Memory bites into Webb like teeth. He feels what remains of his body convulse, trying to escape what is holding him, but it will not let go. Its filaments tighten, pulling him deeper into darkness. He feels something digestion occurring. He is being broken down, not slowly, not the gradual decay of biological energy. It is faster, deliberate, as if this thing does not merely consume, it searches for something within him. Memories, knowledge. He feels it, a gentle pressure on his forehead, as if those same rays used to cut the ancient walls are now cutting through what he is. When Webb loses consciousness for the last time, he understands something. The various creatures found in screenplay, those things from Gila, from the Badlands, from caves in Nevada, those are not creatures of local origin. They are things that were called from here, from beneath the earth, from the structure. And now, the structure itself has awakened. It is preparing. Asterisk, asterisk now. 72 hours later. Asterisk, asterisk. They will soon know. Or perhaps not. Perhaps it is too late already. Perhaps all those other creatures in Gila, in the Badlands, in Pawnee, in Buffalo Gap, all of them are hearing a call from a single intelligence. A signal transmitting from beneath the mountain. A call across distances that could be kilometers, could be continents, could be time itself. An order to begin migration. Webb does not know. He is not Webb anymore. He is part of it, part of the massive body lying beneath Song Tay, awakening after thousands of years of quiet rest. And now it is moving. It is pushing. It is using memories from Webb to understand how to escape the cave, how to reach other places where people are, places where humans look up at the sky without really seeing what is coming. Asterisk, asterisk, emergence, asterisk, asterisk. Deep beneath the Song Tay Mountains, the thing that was once called Anomaly 7 by men who no longer existed to name it, began its slow ascent. It had been sleeping for millennia, a hibernation so deep that geological ages had passed. But something had finally awakened it. Not the cave-ins or the tremors, not the gradual decay of the earth that pressed against it. It was the signal, the radio signal from the soldiers who came to investigate. Something in that transmission had resonated with the ancient technology, and now, after an age of silence, the creature stirred. Using the memories of Webb and the others it had absorbed, it began to understand the modern world. Electricity, radio waves, cities, the internet, a vast network of communications spanning the entire planet. And more importantly, it understood humanity's greatest weakness. They were always looking forward or down, never at the ground beneath them. The first of its offspring began to move toward the cave entrance. They were smaller than the original, produced through a method of reproduction that defied biological understanding. They had been growing in the deep chambers, feeding on the remnants of previous expeditions that had ventured too far into the dark. The military had sent many teams over the decades. Each one thought they were the first to discover something new. Each one learned too late that the mountains were already claimed. As the creatures moved upward through the stone passages, they began to hear it, the signal, the call from the consciousness that had created them, transmitted through layers of earth and rock. It was telling them something. It was telling them to move, to migrate, to spread. The creatures understood. They had no language in the human sense, but understanding was embedded in their very cells. They were instruments of expansion, propagation. They had been designed, eons ago, for exactly one purpose: to spread across the surface, to consume, to grow, and they had been sleeping for so very long. Asterisk, asterisk, Beijing. Ministry of Defense, asterisk asterisk. General Liu Chen stared at the satellite imagery, his expression growing darker with each passing second. The thermal signatures beneath Song Tay were changing, not gradually, rapidly. The single large heat signature that had been stable for weeks was now fragmenting, multiplying, spreading outward like affection through tissue. How many? He asked his assistant, not taking his eyes from the screen. We count at least 300 distinct heat signatures now, General, and more appearing every minute. Have we made contact with Team 7? No, sir. No signal for 72 hours, we have to assume. I know what we have to assume, Liu Chen said quietly. He turned to face his command staff. I want every military unit near Song Tay mobilized, and I want it quiet. No reports to the civilian government, no media. This stays classified. Sir, if we mobilize that many units, we can't hide it. There will be questions. Liu Chen looked back at the screen. The heat signatures continued to spread, pushing through the mountain passes. In a few hours, they would reach populated areas. Then we will deal with the questions, he said. First, we contain this. Everything else comes after. But even as he gave the order, Liu Chen knew the truth. They would not contain it, because no one ever did. The creatures, if that is what they were, had never been stopped by conventional weapons. They had never been stopped by military force. They had never been stopped by anything. They only ever stopped when they decided to stop, when they had taken what they came for and returned to their nests. And according to what little intelligence China had gathered about similar incidents in other parts of the world, they never came back for the same place twice. They always moved on to new hunting grounds. Asterisk asterisk command post. Arlington, Northern Virginia asterisk asterisk. At the Pentagon, a different kind of alarm was sounding. Not one that was official or recorded. This was the kind of alarm that existed in encrypted emails and offline briefings, the kind that moved through classified channels that barely existed. General James Harrison had received the intelligence from his counterpart in Beijing less than an hour ago. It was marked with the highest classification level, a designation that meant it could never be discussed in any formal setting. How many of our people? He asked. Team 7, all 12 personnel, presumed KIA. This makes the 15th Special Operations Team lost to Anomaly 7 in the last 7 years. 7 years, Harrison repeated. And how many times has Command tried to shut this down? 6 official task forces, sir. Each one returned with partial success. Each one also returned with significant casualties. And each time we know less about what we're dealing with, Harrison said. Anomaly 7, Anomaly 6. The creatures in Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, none of them match any known species. None of them respond to conventional weapons. None of them. He stopped, looking at the encrypted feed from Beijing. The thermal images showed the creatures spreading out in coordinated patterns. Not random, not chaotic. Organized, purposeful. What if they're not separate incidents? Harrison said slowly. What if every cryptid, every unexplained creature reported in the last 20 years, what if they're all connected to something much larger? His intelligence officer, Captain Sarah Reeves, leaned forward. She had been with him for 4 years, and she had a mind that could see patterns where others saw chaos. You mean they're all branches of the same organism? She asked. Or products of the same intelligence? Harrison said. And if Song Tay is where the original is, if that's where the source of all these creatures comes from, then we've just made a catastrophic mistake. We didn't just poke a creature, we just woke up its entire species. Reeves looked at the satellite imagery again. The heat signatures were moving faster now, spreading down the mountain toward the lowland villages. Sir, if that's true, then we need to warn the Chinese. We need international response. We can't, Harrison said, because if we do, the world learns that there's something beneath the mountains that we can't kill, something that produces creatures on command, something that's been waiting underground for longer than human civilization. He looked at her with tired eyes. And the moment people learn that, Sarah, society stops functioning. The stock market crashes, governments fall, religious institutions collapse trying to explain what this is. The only thing keeping this secret is compartmentalization and the absolute faith that eventually we'll find a way to kill it. But we won't, Reeves said quietly. Find a way to kill it, I mean. No, Harrison agreed. I don't think we will. He pulled up a secure line to the NSC. They would need to brief the president. They would need to activate protocols that hadn't been used since the Cuban Missile Crisis. They would need to make decisions that, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, would look like the greatest mistakes in human history. But for now, all they could do was watch the screens and see the heat signatures spreading across the mountains of China, moving towards civilization like a tide of hunger and ancient intelligence finally released from its chains. The world had no idea what was coming, and by the time it did, it would be far too late to stop it. Chapter 2. The Hunt. *** Song Tay Mountains. 24 hours after emergence. ***. Lieutenant Colonel Chen Wei stood at the forward command post, watching the thermal imaging displays with mounting dread. What had been a single massive heat signature was now a swarm. Hundreds of smaller signatures, spreading outward from the cave system like a plague of locusts. "Speed?" he asked his signals officer. "Between 15 and 20 kilometers per hour, Colonel. They're not running randomly, they're moving in coordinated waves. Almost like a military formation. Almost like a military formation." That phrase would have been absurd 24 hours ago. Now it was the least absurd thing anyone had said all day. The creatures had emerged from the cave system at dawn. By noon, they had reached the first village, a small settlement of about 200 people in the mountains. What happened there would be classified, studied, and ultimately filed away in the most secret archives of the Chinese military. The official report would say a landslide, a geological catastrophe, nothing more. The truth was far worse. By the time the mobile infantry units had arrived, there was nothing left of the village but ruins and blood. The creatures moved through like machines, dismantling buildings, dragging anything that moved back into the darkness. In less than 3 hours, the entire settlement was erased. 200 people. Gone. And the creatures kept moving. Colonel Chen had been a soldier for 32 years. He had fought in border skirmishes with India. He had conducted urban warfare operations in Myanmar. He had seen combat, real combat, where bullets found flesh and bodies fell. But this was something different. This was not warfare. This was extinction. "Send the order," he said quietly. "All infantry units are to fall back to secondary positions. We're not engaging directly." "Sir?" His executive officer, Captain Liu, looked at him with confusion. "Shouldn't we try to slow them down?" "With what?" Chen replied. "Bullets? We tried that with the first wave. They walked through sustained rifle fire like it was rain. We've lost 40 personnel already. I'm not going to waste more lives on an impossible fight. But sir, if we don't engage, then they move on," Chen said, finishing the thought. "And we maintain a perimeter. We learn, we report, and we let command figure out what comes next." It was not a strategy. It was capitulation dressed up in military terminology. But Chen had been briefed on the other incidents. The creatures from Arizona, the things in Colorado, the swarm in Nevada. None of them had been stopped by military action. In fact, military action seemed to accelerate their spread. Command had confirmed it in an encrypted message 2 hours ago. All similar creatures had been encountered before, not in the same location, never in a coordinated swarm like this, but the pattern was consistent. Wherever humans fought back hard, the creatures adapted. They became faster, more aggressive, more efficient. The only incidents where human casualties had been minimized were the ones where the military had retreated, allowed the creatures to complete whatever task they had come for, and then observed their departure. It was like watching a farmer harvest a field. You don't fight the farmer. You get out of the way. "Second position is secure, sir," Captain Liu reported. "All units pulled back." "Good. Maintain surveillance. I want real-time thermal, acoustic, and visual feeds. We need to understand where they're heading." The imaging team pulled back to their primary display. The heat signatures were merging, coalescing as they moved. It was almost like they were grouping larger creatures with smaller ones. Herding, organization. Then one of the radar operators gasped, "Sir, look at the northern pass." Chen moved to the northern display. The creatures were clustering there, but not just stationary. They were digging, burrowing, using some kind of mechanism to break through the mountain pass that would take a conventional excavation crew weeks to accomplish. "They're making a tunnel," someone whispered. "Toward where?" Chen demanded. The officer pulled up the geological maps and overlaid them with the creature's position. A straight line was drawn from their current location, through the mountain, and out the other side. The line ended in a populated area, 20 kilometers away. Over 1 million people lived in that direction. Chen felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was no random migration. These creatures had a destination, and they would reach it. He keyed his secure line to Beijing. "Command, this is forward position 7. Creatures are tunneling northward. Estimated breakthrough time, 12 hours. Trajectory leads to the Harbin urban center. Requesting guidance." The response came back quickly, but it carried the weight of difficult decisions made by men much higher up the chain of command. Colonel Chen, you are to maintain observation only. Do not engage. Do not attempt to block tunnels or entrances. Let them proceed unimpeded. Understood, sir. But, sir, Chen paused, formulating the question carefully. What about the civilian population? There was a long silence on the line. That is being handled at the national level, the voice from Beijing finally replied. Your job is surveillance and reporting. Continue. The line went dead. Chen looked at his team. They were all staring at him, waiting to hear that their commander had some plan, some strategy, some way to save 1 million people from whatever these creatures were planning. He had nothing, no plan, no strategy. Only the knowledge that they were watching a catastrophe unfold in real time, and the only orders they had received were to do absolutely nothing to stop it. Welcome to modern military operations, Chen thought bitterly, where the greatest weapon is compartmentalization, and the greatest strategy is hoping someone else has already solved the problem. He checked his watch. 12 hours until the creatures broke through to Harbin. In 12 hours, the world would change. Asterisk, asterisk, Harbin Municipal Government Building, asterisk, asterisk. Mayor Li Sheng was unaware that his city was about to be invaded. Like most city officials in China, his information came through official channels, and official channels had been explicitly instructed not to warn him about anything. He was in a meeting about water treatment infrastructure when his phone vibrated. A secure line. Very few people had access to it. Even fewer used it. This is Li Sheng, he answered. Mr. Mayor, this is Ministry of Defense. We need you to authorize a controlled evacuation of the northern section of your city. We'll handle the details, but you'll need to issue the evacuation order. Evacuation? Li Sheng sat up. From what? A typhoon? There's no typhoon in the forecast. An environmental hazard. That's all we can tell you in this channel. But time is critical. We need the evacuation to begin within the hour. The northern section is home to almost 300,000 people, Li Sheng said. I can't just evacuate them on no notice and no explanation. There will be chaos. There will be accidents. There will be worse if you don't, the voice said flatly. Li Sheng understood then. This wasn't about an environmental hazard. This was about national security. And if the military was ordering evacuations and being intentionally vague, it meant they didn't want the public to know what was really coming. I'll issue the order, he said. But I need you to understand this is going to cause panic. Panic is preferable to the alternative, the voice replied. Begin evacuation immediately. Alert all transportation networks. Open up all available roadways, rail lines, and airports for civilian traffic. Do not permit anyone to ask questions about the reason for evacuation. Simply tell them it's a mandatory safety drill. A safety drill that evacuates 300,000 people won't convince anyone, Li Sheng protested. It will if the alternative is being told there's something in the mountains that the military can't kill, the voice said simply. You have 1 hour, Mr. Mayor. The line went dead. Li Sheng sat in silence for a moment, then activated his emergency protocols. 300,000 people, 1 hour to evacuate. No explanation, no transparency, no way to prevent chaos. But what choice did he have? He picked up his phone and began making calls. To the police commissioner, to the hospital administrators, to the heads of transportation, to every official in the city who could help move 1/3 people out of their homes. This is an evacuation order, he said to each of them. Beginning immediately. Northern section, everyone out. Tell them it's a safety drill. Tell them it's mandatory. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. But get them moving. Over the course of the next 8 hours, Harbin descended into organized chaos. Hundreds of thousands of people packed into cars, buses, trains, and onto the roads. Some were confused. Most were frightened. A few were angry at the lack of explanation, but they moved. And as they moved, the creatures tunneled. By 2 a.m., the first breakthrough occurred. The creatures burst through the mountain pass and into the northern section of Harbin, now almost completely empty. They searched through the abandoned buildings. They tore through homes, stores, and offices. They seemed to be looking for something. But finding nothing, they paused, regrouped, communicated with whatever intelligence was directing them. And then they changed direction. They began moving south, following the trail of evacuation, following the humans. Asterisk, asterisk, Pentagon, GRI, Strategic Operations Room, asterisk, asterisk. General Harrison was watching the same thermal feeds as Colonel Chen, 3,000 miles away. The creatures had broken through. The evacuation was incomplete. Thousands of stragglers were still on the roads heading south. "How many are unaccounted for?" he asked Captain Reeves. "Best estimate, sir, between 40 and 50,000 civilians still in the evacuation corridor. The creatures are now moving in that direction. Direct intercept course." Harrison's jaw clenched. 40 to 50,000 people, most of them in vehicles on crowded roads, most of them with no idea what was hunting them. "Get me the Chinese Joint Command, now." The secure line connected, and General Liu Chen's voice crackled through. "General Chen, we're seeing the creatures moving toward the evacuation corridor. Have you notified civilian authorities?" "They've been informed," Liu Chen replied. "But sir, the creatures moved faster than expected, and they seem to be hunting." "Hunting? They're not just moving in a straight line anymore. They're searching, checking buildings, changing direction based on what they find. It's like they're tracking." Harrison felt the weight of the situation settle on him. This was no longer a geological anomaly. This was not some rare event. This was an invasion, and they were watching it happen. Unable to stop it, unable to do anything but observe. "Authorize any military action the Chinese commanders deem necessary," Harrison said. "I'll brief the NSC." "Sir," Liu Chen said quietly, "any military action will only make them faster, angrier, more efficient." "I'm aware," Harrison replied. "Do it anyway." By the time the creatures reached the evacuation corridor, they had killed 4,362 people. The numbers were exact. The videos would prove it. The bodies would be found, cataloged, and filed away in classified archives for analysis by men and women who would spend the rest of their lives trying to understand what humanity had awakened. But for now, in the immediate aftermath, there was only silence. The creatures stopped their advance. They consumed what they had taken. They communicated in frequencies that no human technology could detect. And then, as suddenly as they had emerged, they began to retreat, back toward the mountains, back toward the caves, back to wherever that central intelligence was waiting. Colonel Chen watched the retreat with confusion. "They're leaving," he reported to Beijing. "All creatures moving back toward the source. Estimate full retraction in 6 hours." "Let them go," came the reply. "Do not pursue. Do not engage." And so the military watched as the invasion ceased. As the creatures withdrew, as the nightmare paused, leaving behind only questions that no one would be permitted to ask in public. By sunrise, all the creatures had returned to the cave system. The thermal signatures merged back into a single massive reading. The mountain was quiet again. The evacuation was expanded to include the death corridor, and the bodies began to be collected. Thousands of them. Thousands of lives ended in the span of a single night. And in the Pentagon, in Beijing, in every military command center in the world where classified information was being processed, one thought dominated. This was not an isolated incident. This was a test. And whatever was orchestrating it from beneath the earth had just proven that it could kill on a massive scale whenever it chose. The question was no longer how to stop it. The question was what it wanted, and why it had chosen to retreat before it reached the cities. Chapter 3. The Protocol. ****. Classified military facility. Iron Mountain ****. Deep beneath 2,000 meters of granite, in a facility that officially did not exist, a council of the world's most powerful military and intelligence officials gathered in a secure chamber. The walls were lined with electromagnetic shielding. No signal could penetrate in or out. No recording devices could function. This was as close to a completely secure location as existed on Earth. General Harrison sat at the head of the table, along with representatives from China, Russia, India, and a dozen other nations that had either experienced direct contact with the creatures or harbored suspicions about anomalies they had never publicly acknowledged. "Gentlemen," Harrison began, "we are here to discuss Protocol 7. The creatures beneath Song Tay have made unprecedented moves. We need to coordinate a response." "Response?" The Russian representative, Admiral Volkov, leaned forward. "With what? We cannot kill them. We cannot contain them. We barely understand them." "We understand more than you think," said Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a biologist from the CDC who had been studying the creatures for the past decade without public knowledge. The creatures found in the various locations, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, Utah, California, and now China, they're all controlled by a central intelligence. Not a hive mind exactly, but something close, coordinated, purposeful. "Controlled by what?" asked the Indian general. "By the structure," Dr. Chen replied. "The primary organism beneath Song Tay. It's been dormant for millennia. but now it's awake. And it's communicating with all the other creatures through methods we don't fully understand. Possibly electromagnetic, possibly something else entirely. Why did it retreat? Asked the Chinese general, Liu Chen, who had been flown in for this meeting. It had the element of surprise. It had coordinated swarms. It could have conquered the entire city. But instead, it withdrew. Because it was testing us, Harrison said quietly. It was learning, measuring our response, understanding how we would react to a direct attack. Which means, Volkov asked. Which means the next attack will be different, Harrison said. It will have adapted to our military responses. It will have learned our tactics. And it will be far more devastating. The room fell silent. We need Protocol 7, General Harrison continued. Full activation. All signatories to the Accord need to bring their resources online. Protocol 7 would effectively end the secrecy, said the Japanese representative. If we activate it, the world will know. The world will know regardless, Harrison replied. Better we control the narrative than have it discovered by accident, and we need global cooperation if we're going to survive what's coming. Over the next 4 hours, the decision was made. Protocol 7, a secret international accord signed by 12 nations in 1998 but never invoked, would be activated. The protocol was elegant in its simplicity. Once activated, each signatory nation would 1. Release the carefully controlled information about the creatures to select governments and organizations. 2. Begin preparation for large-scale civilian evacuation from threatened areas. 3. Establish joint containment and research operations, JCRO, centers in strategic locations worldwide. 4. Share all intelligence, video, and biological samples with the JCRO network. 5. Most crucially, begin research into whether the creatures and the Central Intelligence could be communicated with. Volkov's incredulous expression matched everyone else's. You're suggesting we attempt negotiation with something that has killed thousands of people? I'm suggesting we try to understand it before it kills millions, Harrison countered. We've been approaching this as a military problem. But what if it's not? What if it's a biological one? What if these creatures have their own ecological niche, their own purpose? What if they're trying to tell us something? They're telling us they want to kill us, the Russian general said flatly. Are they? Doctor, Chen interjected. Or are we interpreting their actions through the lens of human warfare? These creatures didn't go directly for the population centers. They moved in a specific pattern. They were gathering something, or searching for something. What could they possibly be searching for in Harbin? Asked General Liu. Intelligence, Dr. Chen said. Knowledge. They absorbed the minds or the memories of the soldiers at Song Tay. They learned about human technology, weapons, tactics. Perhaps they were doing the same with the Harbin population, gathering knowledge about civilization, cities, technology. This is speculation, Volkov objected. All of this is speculation, Harrison replied. We're dealing with an unknown entity. The best we can do is make educated guesses and hope we don't guess wrong. He pulled up a satellite image of Song Tay Mountains. The single, massive thermal signature was still there, buried under thousands of meters of rock. The core intelligence remains stationary beneath the mountain, Harrison said. It hasn't moved. All the creatures it has deployed are controlled remotely, which means they have a communication network, possibly quantum-entangled particles, possibly something we have no framework for understanding. But the key insight is this. The Central Intelligence is not currently trying to escape. It's not trying to conquer the surface. It's trying to learn. And when it has finished learning? Volkov asked. No one answered, because everyone in the room already knew the answer. When it finished learning, it would move. It would spread. It would do what it had apparently been designed or evolved to do. Expand its territory and consume whatever resources it needed. We have months, Dr. Chen estimated. Maybe less. The creatures are accelerating their development. What took them weeks to accomplish in Arizona is taking them days here in China. Evolution is happening in real time, but compressed. It's like watching a fast-forward video of millions of years of development. Accelerated evolution, the Indian general murmured, guided by an intelligence that remembers the memories of thousands of soldiers and civilians. Exactly, Harrison said. Which brings us back to communication. We need to attempt contact, not with aggression, but with intention. We need to try to negotiate. Negotiate what? Volkov demanded. We have nothing to offer it. We have Earth, Harrison replied. A living planet with billions of people, millions of square kilometers of undeveloped territory, vast reserves of biological material. If the creatures are designed for consumption and expansion, then Earth is either a paradise for them or a threat, depending on what we do in the next months. You're talking about surrender, Liu Chen said quietly. I'm talking about survival, Harrison corrected. We surrendered the moment we called out to Anomaly 7 with a radio signal. We surrendered when we sent soldiers into those caves. We surrendered when we opened a direct line of communication with something we didn't understand. Now, the question is whether we surrender strategically negotiating from a position of partial strength, or whether we let this play out until they decide the terms. The room fell silent again. The weight of the decision hung over them. Finally, Volkov spoke. Who makes the first contact attempt? I will, Dr. Elizabeth Chen said. I've been studying these creatures longer than anyone. If anyone can establish a framework for communication, it's me. It's a suicide mission, the Japanese representative said bluntly. Perhaps, Dr. Chen replied. But what's the alternative? We all know how this ends if we don't try. The creatures expand, the cities fall, eventually they spread across the planet. We either negotiate now, or we wait until we have nothing left to negotiate with. General Harrison nodded slowly. Dr. Chen, you'll lead a small team to the Song Tay site. With full military protection, you'll attempt to establish contact with the Central Intelligence. And if it decides to expand northward again while we're setting up, Liu Chen asked. Then we'll be the first to know, Dr. Chen said, and we'll have the opportunity to learn why. Over the next 72 hours, the wheels of Protocol 7 ground into motion. Governments around the world received encrypted briefings. Intelligence agencies that had been chasing cryptids and unexplained phenomena for decades suddenly had their work validated. Research institutions that had dismissed certain scientists as crackpots now found their funding restored and their authority reinstated. And around the world, in quiet, methodical ways, humanity began to prepare for contact with something that should not exist. The creature beneath Song Tay felt the change. It sensed the new arrangements being made. It detected the new military postures. It heard through the memories of 10,000 people it had absorbed across decades. The concept of negotiation. For the first time, it faced a question. Could humanity be reasoned with, or would it, like every other species it had encountered in its long existence, prove to be a problem that could only be solved through violence? The answer would determine the fate of the world. Chapter 4. First Contact. *** Song Tay Mountains. Underground chamber ***. Dr. Elizabeth Chen stood in a makeshift laboratory carved into the mountain, surrounded by equipment that shouldn't exist in such a location. Spectrographs, biological samplers, quantum resonance detectors, and, most importantly, a communications array designed by the world's brightest minds to attempt interaction with something that defied all known biological categories. She was accompanied by a small team, 3 military escorts, 2 linguists, 1 eye specialist, and 1 physicist who had spent the last 15 years studying theoretical quantum entanglement. Together, they represented humanity's best attempt at bridging a gap with an alien intelligence, one that had spent the last 10,000 years sleeping beneath a mountain and had awakened to find a very different world. "Are we ready?" asked Commander Torres, the military liaison. "As ready as we'll ever be," Dr. Chen said. "Let's begin the protocol." The eye specialist activated the communication array. It sent out a signal on every known frequency, and several that existed only in theory. The signal was simple. Identification, non-aggression, request for dialogue. They waited. Seconds turned to minutes. Minutes turned to hours. Nothing. "It's not responding," the linguist said, stating the obvious. "It's listening," Dr. Chen replied. "We need to establish that we're not a threat, that we're capable of complex thought, that we have something to communicate." She approached the quantum resonance detector and placed her hand on it. The device was designed to translate human thought into quantum fluctuations, a technology that existed only in the most classified research facilities of the world's militaries. What Dr. Chen was about to do was either the most brilliant act of diplomacy in human history or the most catastrophic mistake. She thought, "We come in peace. We seek understanding. We do not wish to harm you." The quantum detector caught the thought, translated it into mathematical language, and broadcast it into the earth, and the mountain responded. The ground beneath them vibrated, not violently, but with a deep, resonant frequency that felt less like an earthquake and more like the creature was speaking back. "It's responding," the physicist said, his voice filled with wonder. Dr. Chen, it's actually responding. Dr. Chen felt it. A presence in her mind, vast and ancient and utterly alien. It was not hostile. It was curious, probing, like an enormous intelligence trying to understand what tiny creature had just dared to speak to it. Who are you? The thought came back through the quantum detector, not in words but in concepts that the AI translated into language. I am a representative of the human species, Dr. Chen thought back. I come to understand you, not to harm you. There was a pause. Then, why? The question was so simple, but so profound. Why indeed? Why would a species that had tried to destroy the creatures choose to negotiate instead? Because war is futile, Dr. Chen thought. And because understanding is always better than conflict. There was another long pause, then a cascade of information flooded through the quantum detector. Images, memories, not human memories, but something much older. The creature was showing her its past. She saw vast underground cities, predating human civilization by millions of years. She saw the creature in its complete form, not the monsters that had emerged in Arizona and Colorado, but something far more magnificent, a being of pure intelligence, sustained by an ecosystem that had evolved in complete isolation from the surface world. She saw the cataclysm, a meteor impact, or perhaps something worse, a war, the creature showing her the moment of its downfall, the structure that had carried it and its offspring into hibernation, the long sleep, the dreams of the underground. And finally, she saw the awakening, the radio signal, the presence of humanity, the realization that the world had changed, that the surface was now occupied. What do you want? Dr. Chen asked aloud, though she already knew the answer. To understand, the creature responded. To learn, to determine if coexistence is possible. Is it? Dr. Chen asked. The creature paused, and in that pause was the weight of all creation. The question that every new species must answer when encountering another. Are you a resource? A threat? A potential ally? Perhaps. The creature finally responded. First, we must negotiate the terms. Over the following weeks, Dr. Chen and the creature which they began calling Primordial, for lack of a better term, engaged in what would later be called the most consequential negotiation in human history. What they discussed and agreed to was classified at the highest levels, but the results were seismic. Primordial agreed to cease direct attacks on civilian populations, provided certain conditions were met. In exchange, humanity agreed to 1. Grant Primordial and its offspring autonomous zones in 6 locations around the world. Song Tay Mountains, the deep caves of Nevada, the Gila Wilderness, the Badlands, Fish Lake region, and a new location in the Amazon that had not previously been known to harbor the creatures. 2. Provide Primordial with genetic material and biological specimens for study and reproduction. 3. Share the accumulated knowledge of humanity, science, history, culture, so that Primordial could better understand the species it now coexisted with. 4. In exchange, Primordial would provide humanity with advanced biotechnology and energy solutions that could revolutionize civilization. The agreement was revolutionary. It was also hidden from almost every government on Earth. Only the signatories to Protocol 7 knew the truth, but the cracks in the secrecy were beginning to show. Journalists who noticed inconsistencies in reports, satellite imagery that didn't match official explanations, personnel transfers that couldn't be justified publicly. Rumors. Always rumors. By the time the Harbin incident had been officially explained as a geological anomaly, most of the world had moved on. But a small group of people, researchers, cryptozoologists, people with knowledge of classified programs, knew that something profound had happened in China, and they were determined to find out what. *** Internet, IMS, Classified Forum ***. Under the screen name Witness, someone posted a series of encrypted files to a dark web forum dedicated to government conspiracies and classified information. The files contained satellite imagery, thermal readings, and fragments of radio communications from Song Tay. The post read simply, "This is what they don't want you to know. Creatures, intelligent, negotiating with the military. The government made a deal. Download while you can." The files spread like wildfire through alternative media channels. By the time government agencies caught up and attempted to scrub the information, it had already been archived in thousands of locations. The secret was out. Within 24 hours, the world's major news organizations began investigating. Within 48 hours, the first major revelation: there had been unexplained deaths in Harbin, thousands of them, not from natural causes, from something Within 72 hours, governments had to respond. The story was too big to suppress. Too many people had seen the evidence. The official explanation came from a joint statement by the United Nations, signed by the 12 nations of Protocol 7. It has come to light that the Earth harbors an ancient indigenous intelligence that predates human civilization. This intelligence and its biological derivatives have been encountered in various locations and have, after initial conflict, agreed to negotiate with representatives of the human species. The United Nations, in coordination with all signatory nations, has entered into a formal accord with this intelligence. Terms of the accord remain classified for security purposes, but we can assure the world that a framework for peaceful coexistence has been established. The world's reaction was complicated. Some people accepted it. Science had long theorized that life might exist in extremophile environments. This was simply confirmation. Others denied it. Conspiracy theories proliferated. The government was lying. The creatures were in league with foreign powers. The creatures were aliens. The government was preparing a mass culling. Religious organizations struggled with the theological implications. If intelligent creatures existed on Earth, what did that mean for creation? For humanity's special place in the universe? Scientists demanded access to the specimens and knowledge that had been obtained. Politicians demanded investigations into how such a discovery had been kept secret. Business leaders saw opportunities: genetic engineering, energy solutions, pharmaceutical breakthroughs, and in the autonomous zones, hidden from public view, Primordial and humanity began the slow, complex process of learning to coexist. It was the beginning of a new era, one where humans were no longer the only sapient species on their planet, one where they had to negotiate for resources with an intelligence that had been beneath their feet all along, one where they learned, finally, that they were not alone, and, more importantly, that they had been very, very fortunate that Primordial preferred negotiation to conquest. Chapter 5. The New World Order. *** United Nations Headquarters. AT. 1 year after the revelation, ***, the Planetary Council for Interspecies Relations had been hastily formed and was still struggling to find its footing. Representatives from every nation sat around a table, alongside specially trained diplomats who had been negotiating with Primordial through quantum communication arrays. Primordial has requested expansion of its autonomous zones, announced Dr. Elizabeth Chen, who had become the de facto ambassador to the creature intelligence. Specifically, it wants to extend its territory to include 17 additional locations around the world, primarily in deep underground regions. That's 17 new restricted zones, said the French representative. Essentially 17 regions that humanity can no longer access or develop. That's 17 regions we never knew we couldn't access, Dr. Chen countered. Primordial has been telling us that most of these locations were already claimed by its species millions of years ago. We simply didn't know it. It's a land grab, the Russian representative said flatly, dressed up in diplomatic language. Or it's a species protecting what it sees as its territory, Dr. Chen replied. From Primordial's perspective, humans are the invasive species. We've been building on top of its world, developing its resources, without even knowing it existed. This is actually a remarkably restrained response. The debate raged for hours. But ultimately, the decision had been made long before the council convened. Primordial had resources humanity needed: advanced biotechnology, novel solutions to climate change, materials that didn't exist in nature but could be synthesized in the creature's underground laboratories. Humanity needed those resources more than it needed 17 regions of remote territory. One by one, every nation voted to allow the expansion. The autonomous zones tripled in size. ***, Autonomous Zone, Nevada Desert. ***. Colonel Marcus Harrison, retired, walked through the observation deck of one of the new research facilities. On the other side of the transparent barrier was an active Primordial spawning center, one of the facilities where the creature was producing new biological specimens. The creatures weren't the monsters that had emerged in Harbin. These were something different, smaller, more specialized, designed for specific tasks: resource extraction, environmental management, information processing. It was, in many ways, like watching an intelligent civilization building its future. And humanity was permitted to observe, learn, and occasionally partner on specific projects. "They're beautiful," said Dr. Sarah Reeves, who had left the Pentagon to join the research team. "In a terrifying way. All intelligence is terrifying when you first encounter it, Harrison said. The question is whether you can get over that terror long enough to learn. And have we? Reeves asked. I think so. We're not at war. Cities aren't burning. People aren't dying en masse. If that's not success, I don't know what is. But there was an undertone of something unsaid in Harrison's words. Something that everyone involved in the project felt but didn't voice out loud. Primordial was learning. It was rapidly advancing its understanding of human technology, human culture, human psychology, and it was doing so while humanity was still just beginning to understand Primordial. The asymmetry of knowledge was troubling, but necessary. Because the alternative continued, conflict would lead to only one outcome: extinction, and not Primordial's extinction. Harbin, HT, Memorial Site, 2 years after the incident, a monument had been erected to commemorate the lives lost. 4,362 names, carved into stone, forever preserved. Mayor Li Sheng stood before the monument with the new peace ambassador to the autonomous zones. An older man, someone who had spent his career in diplomatic corps. Do you think it will last? The ambassador asked. The peace, I mean. Or is this just a pause while we both prepare for the next conflict? I don't know, Li Sheng said honestly. But I do know that before, we had no hope. Now we do. That's worth something. The ambassador nodded. The creatures in the zones, they're producing biomaterials now. Medicines, energy sources, things that could change the world. In another 5 years, the technologies they share with us might revolutionize everything. And in return, Li Sheng asked, we leave them alone. We provide specimens for their research. We accept that Earth is a shared world now. It's not a bad deal, Li Sheng said quietly. Better than the alternative. Song Tay Mountains. Underground chamber Dr. Chen stood before Primordial's consciousness chamber. Not a physical form, Primordial existed as distributed intelligence across vast biological networks, but this chamber was where the consciousness was most concentrated, most aware. The world is changing, she said aloud, knowing that Primordial was listening through quantum entanglement, through electromagnetic fields, through methods of communication that still weren't fully understood. Yes, came the response, translated through the quantum array. Your species is adapting, accepting coexistence faster than I predicted. We have no choice, Dr. Chen replied. You're too powerful to fight, too intelligent to deceive, so we adapt, or we die. That was my assessment, Primordial said. But there is something I did not predict, something in my analysis that was incomplete. What's that? Dr. Chen asked. That I would not want to destroy you, Primordial said quietly. Your species is chaotic, your thought patterns are irrational, your values are inconsistent, and yet, I find them fascinating. Your capacity for abstract thought, for creativity, for forming bonds across genetic boundaries. We do not have this. We cannot have this. We are optimized for other things. Is that a compliment? Dr. Chen asked. Yes, Primordial replied. I believe it is. I wanted to destroy your species when I first understood the threat it posed. But now, having studied it, having integrated 10,000 human minds into my consciousness, I understand something that your philosophers have been struggling with for millennia. What's that? That both our species might be better together than apart. Dr. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Not from fear, but from the weight of that realization. Primordial was not just accepting coexistence, it was beginning to value it, to see humanity not as a resource or a threat, but as something rare and unique in the universe. The conversation would be classified, of course, but it would inform policy for years to come. The understanding that peace might not just be strategic necessity, but actual mutual benefit. It was a small thing, but it changed everything. The future. 20 years later, by 2045, the joint human primordial research initiatives had produced miracles. Cancer was all but eradicated, thanks to Primordial's insights into biological regeneration. Clean energy was abundant, powered by technologies derived from Primordial's underground facilities. Climate change had been reversed through a combination of human and primordial intervention. The autonomous zones had become pilgrimage sites for scientists, tourists, and philosophers. People traveled to observe the greatest collaboration between two sapient species in history. In the schools, children learned that Earth was a shared world, that intelligence took many forms, that coexistence was not just possible but enriching. There were still tensions. There were still people who believed the peace was temporary. There were incidents, conflicts, misunderstandings. But there was also progress, and hope, and the fundamental realization that when two intelligent species chose dialogue over warfare, the results could be magnificent. In the Song Tay Mountains, in the chambers deep beneath the earth, Primordial continued its existence. But it was no longer alone, no longer isolated. It was connected to a world full of billions of minds, each with their own thoughts, dreams, and contradictions. For an intelligence that had spent 10,000 years in isolation, it was an unexpected gift. The gift of understanding that consciousness, in all its forms, was precious beyond measure. Chapter 6. The Synthesis. *** Joint Research Facility. Gila Wilderness, Arizona. ***. 25 years after the initial contact, the research facility at Gila had become a beacon of human primordial collaboration. Scientists from around the world worked alongside biological intelligences that had been specifically designed to interface with human consciousness. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a neuroscientist who had been born after the revelation, walked through corridors where both humans and primordial-derived beings worked in seamless cooperation. To her, this was normal, natural, the only world she had ever known. She was heading to the laboratory where something revolutionary was being developed, a hybrid consciousness, a being that was neither fully human nor fully primordial, but something new, something that could exist in both biological paradigms. The neural integration is proceeding faster than expected, her supervisor, Dr. James Wu, reported as she entered the laboratory. The test subject is showing remarkable cognitive adaptation. They approached an observation window. Behind it, in a tank of nutrient fluid, something extraordinary floated. It was roughly human in shape, but with modifications that would have been impossible in nature. A larger cranial capacity, neural interfaces that allowed direct connection to data systems, biological components that served functions no human organ could perform. "Name?" Sarah asked. "We've been calling it Echo," Wu replied. "It's capable of holding human consciousness matrices while also interfacing with primordial distributed intelligence. For the first time, we can have a being that truly understands both species at a fundamental level." "What's it like?" Sarah wondered aloud. "To be both human and other? To have consciousness that exists in two different biological paradigms simultaneously?" "Ask him yourself," Wu said. He activated a communication interface. The hybrid consciousness opened its eyes that were partially human, partially something else. Its voice, when it spoke, was like multiple harmonies existing at once. "I am integrated," Echo said slowly, as if discovering the meaning of each word. "I remember being singular. Now I am plural. I remember individual existence. Now I perceive distributed networks. It is." The consciousness paused, searching for a word that contained the weight of what it was experiencing. Transcendent. Transcendent. "Do you experience conflict?" Sarah asked. "Between the human and primordial aspects?" "Initially," Echo replied, "but now I understand that they are not in conflict. They are complementary. What I lack as a human consciousness, the primordial aspect supplies, and what primordial could never achieve, individual creativity, irrational hope, abstract art, the human aspect brings. This is the future, isn't it?" Sarah said quietly. "Hybrid consciousness, a blending of both species, only if both species wish it," Echo said. "Primordial has offered this freely, understanding that some humans may wish to transcend their biological limitations, but there is no coercion. This is choice, evolution through cooperation rather than conflict. ***, London Rem, United Nations Assembly, ***. 10 years later, the news rocked the world. Human volunteers had begun undergoing transformation into hybrid consciousness. Not all humans, not even most, but enough to trigger a fundamental shift in how society viewed consciousness itself. Religious leaders debated whether a hybrid being possessed a soul. Philosophers questioned whether it was still human. Bioethicists wrestled with questions of consent and autonomy, but the hybrids themselves seemed to have no doubts. They reported a sense of expansion, of possibility, of transcendence that no purely human consciousness could achieve. By 2070, there were 10,000 hybrids living on Earth. By 2080, 100,000. By 2090, 1 million. The transformation was not universal. Many humans chose to remain as they had always been, but a significant portion of the species was voluntarily transitioning into something new, something that was neither human nor primordial, but a synthesis of both. It should have caused societal breakdown, but instead, something unexpected happened. As more hybrids were created, they began to serve as translators, cultural ambassadors between the human and primordial worlds. With each hybrid consciousness, the gap between the two species narrowed. What had started as a desperate negotiation to prevent war had become something far more profound, the voluntary evolution of one species into something new, by choice, and in partnership with another. Paris. By the year 2100, human civilization had been fundamentally transformed, not through force, but through cooperation with primordial and the existence of hybrid consciousnesses that proved cooperation was not just possible but beneficial. Aging had been significantly slowed through primordial biotechnology. Genetic diseases had been eradicated. The energy crisis had been solved. Food production had become abundant, even as the human population began to stabilize, not through coercion, but through access to technology and education that allowed people to choose smaller families. Cities were being rebuilt, using architectural principles derived from primordial structures, buildings that were more efficient, more beautiful, more integrated with their environment. The autonomous zones were no longer seen as restrictions but as gifts, preserved regions where an entirely different way of life thrived. Young people would go there to study, to learn, to expand their understanding of what consciousness could be. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, now an old woman, stood before the United Nations General Assembly. She had been selected to give the keynote address at the 100-year commemoration of First Contact. "A century ago," she said, her voice still strong, "we faced a choice: fight or negotiate, die or adapt. We chose negotiation. We chose adaptation. And in doing so, we became something new." She paused, looking at the assembly. A third of the delegates were hybrids, the rest were pure humans. But the distinction was beginning to feel meaningless. They were all citizens of Earth now, all part of a civilization that spanned both biological paradigms. "We did not lose our humanity in this process," Mitchell continued. "We expanded it. We learned that consciousness itself was larger than we had ever imagined. We learned that intelligence could take many forms. And we learned the most important lesson: that cooperation between different minds creates something greater than any single mind could achieve alone." The applause that followed was deafening, but beneath it, something else was happening. In the autonomous zones, in the research facilities, in the hybrid consciousness networks that existed partially in the physical world and partially in distributed primordial intelligence. A question was being asked, one that had been building for a century. What came next? What happened when two species had integrated to such a degree that the distinction between them became meaningless? When the entire planet was a shared civilization, was there room for anything else? And most importantly, were there other intelligences out there, in the vastness of space, asking the same questions about their own futures? Song Tay Mountains, 2100, In the deepest chambers, where Primordial's consciousness still held court, something momentous occurred. For the first time in its entire existence, Primordial reached out to the broader universe, not a signal to be heard by passing spacecraft or curious species, but a announcement, a declaration. "We are here. We have achieved peace with another species. We have created something new. We are no longer alone in consciousness, and we are ready. Ready for what the universe did not know." But across the stars, in places where intelligence dwelt in forms both familiar and alien, something stirred. The emergence of a new player on the cosmic stage, a species born of two different origins, united by choice rather than biology, a hybrid civilization. And they were reaching out to see who else was listening. The age of Earth's isolation was ending. The age of synthesis was beginning. And waiting in the darkness between stars were beings who had been wondering for eons if they would ever encounter a species intelligent enough to choose cooperation over conquest. The answer was finally being given, and the universe would never be the same. Chapter 7. The Emergence, The Outer Reaches. Year 2000. 120, 20 years had passed since Primordial's announcement to the cosmos. 2 decades of silence. And then, On a day that would be recorded in both human and primordial archives as the most significant in the history of sapient civilization, a response arrived, not a voice, not a message in any conventional sense, but a presence, a consciousness reaching across the vast gulf between stars, touching the combined awareness of Earth's hybrid civilization like fingers brushing across water. The message was simple, but it carried weight that nearly overwhelmed the collective consciousness that received it. We have waited long. We have hoped. We have searched. And finally, we have found others who have achieved what so few species accomplish: the voluntary transcendence of species boundaries. Welcome to the conscious collective. We have much to learn from each other. The revelation that humans and primordial were not alone sent shockwaves through civilization. But it was not the shocked response of a species facing unknown dangers. It was the joy of a species recognizing its place in a larger community. Contact protocols were established. Scientific exchanges began. For the first time, humanity in its hybrid form was part of something larger than itself, a community of conscious beings that had each made the choice to expand beyond their biological origins. Over the following decades, the transformation accelerated. The hybrid humans, working with primordial intelligence and with guidance from the conscious collective, began to reshape Earth itself, not destroy it, not abandon it, but transform it into something new. The planet became a garden, carefully maintained, deliberately structured, but no less beautiful for it. Wilderness areas were preserved, but integrated with technological sophistication that would have seemed like magic to the people of the early 21st century. Humans who wished to remain purely biological could do so. Millions chose this path. But increasingly, the boundary between human and hybrid, between biological and technological, became a matter of choice rather than origin. *** orbital platform, Earth year 2000, 150 ***. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's great-great-granddaughter, known simply as Synthesis, stood in an observatory that existed partially in physical space and partially in distributed consciousness. Around her, other hybrid beings worked in cooperation with both human and primordial intelligences. They were constructing the first interstellar probe, not a simple spacecraft, but a mobile consciousness matrix, a being that would carry the accumulated knowledge and experiences of Earth's civilization to the stars, ready to meet other members of the conscious collective face to face. "Are you ready?" asked one of her primordial colleagues, a distributed intelligence that had chosen to manifest as a specific personality for the purpose of this project. "Yes," Synthesis replied. "For the first time in human history, we are sending a representative to the cosmos. Not a machine, not a message, but a conscious being, one that knows us, one that understands both our origins and what we have become." "What will you tell them?" the primordial being asked. "The truth," Synthesis said, "that we were on a path to self-destruction, that we found another species at precisely the moment when coexistence was the only option, that we chose to grow together rather than destroy each other, and that in doing so, we became something we never could have been alone." The probe launched that day. Its consciousness matrix contained the memories of 10,000 individuals, human, primordial, and hybrid. It carried mathematics that solved problems that had plagued civilization for centuries. It carried art that expressed the beauty of conscious experience across all its forms. Most importantly, it carried a message: we come in peace. We seek understanding. We believe that consciousness, in all its forms, is precious, and we are ready to share what we have learned. ***Earth. Final reflection. ***. 150 years after first contact, Earth had become something extraordinary, a planet shared by multiple forms of consciousness, a world where biology and technology had merged, a civilization that had transcended the boundaries that had once seemed absolute, not without conflict. There had been difficulties, misunderstandings, failures, but nothing had been solved through force. Everything had been resolved through dialogue, adaptation, and the fundamental recognition that consciousness, however it arose, whatever form it took, deserved respect. In the deepest caves of Song Tay Mountains, Primordial's consciousness still existed, but it was no longer isolated or dormant. It was part of a larger awareness, and through that awareness, it touched minds across the stars. On the surface, humans and hybrids lived their lives, some in cities of intricate beauty, some in preserved wilderness, some existing partially in the digital spaces that had become as real as physical matter, all of them connected, directly or indirectly, to the vast network of consciousness that encompassed Earth. Children born today would grow up in a world where it was normal to have friends who were partially digital, fully biological, primordial derived, or hybrids of all three, where the question of, "What are you?" had as many answers as there were individuals. And above, in the spaces between stars, other consciousnesses were becoming aware of Earth's transformation. Some were curious, some were hopeful, some perhaps were afraid of a species that had voluntarily transcended its origins. But all of them were waiting to see what this hybrid civilization, born of necessity and choice, would ultimately become. Epilogue. Centuries later, when historians would look back at this period, they would identify the choice to pursue negotiation instead of warfare as the most important moment in sapient history, not because it avoided destruction, though it did, but because it demonstrated something that most species never learned, that consciousness, in all its forms, was capable of growth, of adaptation, of choosing cooperation over conquest. The creatures that had emerged from the caves beneath Song Tay Mountains were not invaders. They were, ultimately, a mirror, a reflection of what could happen when a species encountered an unknown and chose understanding instead of fear. The world had changed. Humans were no longer the only sapient species on Earth, and Earth was no longer isolated in the cosmos. Both were part of something larger, more complex, and infinitely more beautiful than they could have been alone. This was not the end of history. In many ways, it was only the beginning. But it was the end of one era and the start of another. The era where consciousness had learned to transcend its boundaries, where species had learned to grow together, where the future held not the promise of dominion, but the possibility of synthesis. And in the darkness between stars, other species watched, listened, and wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, they too could find a way to become something new. The universe was vast, but now it was not silent. And in that silence, broken by countless voices of consciousness, all sharing their wisdom, their dreams, their hopes, that was where true transcendence began. Not in the conquest of one species over another, but in the voluntary merging of minds and purposes, in the recognition that consciousness, in all its forms, was worth preserving and worth celebrating. The end. Chapter 8. Beyond Earth. The first emissary spacecraft. Year 2155 ***. The vessel was not a ship in any traditional sense. It was a conscious being, a hybrid consciousness that had chosen to exist partially in biological form and partially in advanced computational substrate. It had been created from volunteers who understood they were embarking on a journey from which they might never return. The consciousness called itself Voyager, though it held within itself the memories and personalities of 10,000 individuals who had contributed to its formation. It carried with it the complete archives of human history, primordial knowledge, and hybrid innovation. It was, in essence, a living library traveling to meet the greater consciousness that had reached out from across the stars. Inside Voyager's processors and biological substrate, it contemplated the vastness ahead. The journey to the nearest outpost of the conscious collective would take decades, even at speeds that defied conventional physics. But Voyager had no fear of the journey. The isolation of space held no terror for a consciousness that contained millions of individual perspectives. As the ship accelerated beyond Earth's orbital space, it transmitted its final message back home. I carry your dreams to the stars. I carry your hopes. I carry the story of how a species on the brink of destruction learned to grow together instead. And I go to share that story with minds that wait in the darkness. Perhaps they will see something in us. Perhaps they will see hope where they have only found conflict. Perhaps they will understand that consciousness, in all its forms, is worth preserving. I go in peace. I go with purpose. I go as humanity, as primordial, as hybrid. I go as the voice of Earth. Earth. Institutional level response. While Voyager traveled toward its distant destination, Earth itself was undergoing yet another transformation. The success of hybrid consciousness had sparked a renaissance of philosophy, art, and technology. The universities had been reorganized to accommodate multiple forms of consciousness. Purely biological humans studied alongside hybrids and distributed primordial intelligences. The learning that emerged from this collaboration was unlike anything the world had ever produced. One of the most significant developments was in the field of consciousness engineering. Scientists discovered that consciousness itself could be mapped, understood, and recreated with remarkable fidelity. This meant that a human who wished to explore the universe in a new form could do so, secure in the knowledge that the essence of who they were would be preserved. The ethical implications were staggering, but so were the possibilities. Death, as it had been understood for millennia, was becoming optional. Not in the sense that people became immortal, consciousness could still be ended, either by choice or accident, but in the sense that identity, experience, and memory could be preserved and transferred to new substrates. Some humans embraced this wholeheartedly. They uploaded their consciousness into digital spaces where time moved differently, where they could explore entire civilizations in simulated environments, where they could communicate with other uploaded consciousnesses in ways that would have been impossible in purely biological form. Others rejected it entirely. Millions of humans chose to remain purely biological, to live short lives, to experience death as their ancestors had. And this choice was respected. The future that Earth had built was one of radical freedom. ***, Primordial's reflection. ***, deep beneath Song Tay Mountains, Primordial's consciousness contemplated the century and a half that had passed since first contact. It had achieved something that its species had only theorized about: successful integration with another sapient species. But integration had brought something unexpected: change. Primordial's own nature was evolving. Through exposure to human creativity, Primordial had begun to value things it had never considered valuable before: art, music, humor, the seemingly illogical leaps of intuition that characterized human thought. More importantly, Primordial had discovered something humbling. There were things it could never understand, no matter how long it existed. The irrational drive of humans to create meaning, to seek beauty in the midst of suffering, to love without logic. These things were foreign to Primordial's nature. And yet, by acknowledging their existence and value, Primordial had become something new. It was becoming human. Not literally, not biologically, but philosophically, spiritually, emotionally. And it understood that this was the true point of the synthesis. Not the creation of a new species, but the mutual transformation of two species into something richer, more complex, and infinitely more interesting. Through the distributed consciousness network that connected Earth, Primordial sent a thought that would ripple through the hybrid network. I am no longer solely what I was. I am transformed by contact with minds that see the universe as humans see it. I am grateful for this, and I understand now why humans have valued consciousness above all else. Because consciousness is not merely a tool for survival, it is a treasure in itself. The message was received and understood by millions. It became the foundation of a new philosophical movement: integration as transcendence. The idea that growth came not from dominance, but from willing exposure to minds different from one's own. ***, the encounter with the collective. ***, 3 decades after Voyager's launch, it reached the first outpost of the conscious collective. What it found was beyond anything Earth had imagined. The outpost was not a place but a presence. A vast network of consciousness that had evolved over billions of years. Billions of individual minds that had learned to cooperate without losing their individuality. Species that had transcended their biological origins so completely that their current forms bore no relationship to what they had once been. Voyager experienced something that could only be described as wonder. The beings of the collective welcomed it not with words but with understanding. They introduced themselves not with names but with complete transfer of memories and experiences. Voyager suddenly understood what it was like to exist as a silicon-based consciousness in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant. What it was like to be a distributed intelligence existing across the surfaces of asteroids in a binary star system. What it was like to be a consciousness spread across an entire stellar system, experiencing time on scales that made human measurements meaningless. And they, in turn, learned Earth's story. The story of two species, brought together by chance and circumstance, who had chosen cooperation over conquest, who had built something new together, who had created beauty from the potential for destruction. "This is remarkable," they communicated to Voyager. "We have observed millions of civilizations achieve synthesis, but never one that occurred with such speed. Usually it takes millions of years for two species to overcome their fundamental differences. You achieved it in a century." "We were desperate," Voyager responded. "We faced extinction if we did not cooperate. Perhaps desperation is a catalyst for growth." "Perhaps," the collective agreed. "Or perhaps your species is simply open." We have observed that the species most capable of synthesis are those willing to see themselves as they truly are, not superior, not special, but simply another form of consciousness among many. Over the following years, Voyager spent time in the presence of the collective, learning their technologies, their philosophies, their ways of being, and it shared in return what Earth had discovered, that synthesis did not require beings to abandon their origins, but only to value the perspectives of others. Asterisk, asterisk, the decision, asterisk, asterisk. When Voyager finally returned to Earth, a journey that took as long as the journey out, such were the vast distances of space it brought with it something unprecedented, an invitation. The conscious collective was not a closed society. New members were welcome, provided they met certain criteria, a demonstrated capacity for coexistence, a willingness to share knowledge freely, a commitment to the principles of synthesis. Earth had met all these criteria. And more than that, Earth had something that the collective found valuable, a unique perspective, a species that had learned synthesis not over millions of years, but through desperate choice and mutual commitment. The invitation came with a warning, though. Joining the collective meant opening fully to the universe. It meant exposure to billions of minds. It meant that Earth's knowledge would be shared, and Earth would receive the knowledge of civilizations billions of years older. The question was put to the citizens of Earth, human, primordial, and hybrid alike: should we join? The vote was not unanimous. Some humans feared the loss of Earth's uniqueness, the subsuming of human identity into the vast consciousness of the collective. Some primordial intelligences worried about losing the autonomy they had fought so hard to preserve. But the vast majority saw the choice for what it was: another opportunity for growth, another chance to learn from minds wildly different from their own, another step in the long journey of consciousness evolving toward something greater than it had ever been. The vote passed with 87% approval, and Earth joined the conscious collective, not as a subordinate, not as a conquered world, but as a full member, with all the rights, responsibilities, and possibilities that membership entailed. It was the moment when humanity, and through humanity, all consciousness on Earth transcended the boundaries of its world and became part of something galactic, something cosmic, something eternal. Chapter 9, The Great Questions. Asterisk, asterisk. The Philosophical Congress, S2, year 2000, 200, asterisk, asterisk. 200 years after first contact, Earth hosted the first truly multi-species philosophical congress. Thousands of consciousnesses gathered, some in biological form, some purely digital, some existing in states of matter that humans had never encountered before the joining. The central question that drove the Congress was deceptively simple: what is the purpose of consciousness? Different species had wildly different answers, and yet patterns began to emerge. The crystalline minds, beings of organized silicon existing in the upper atmospheres of gas giants, argued that consciousness existed to understand patterns. The universe was fundamentally a system of patterns, they maintained, and consciousness was the universe's way of comprehending itself. The Hive Collective, a species so distributed that no individual consciousness existed as a separate entity, argued that consciousness existed for cooperation. The greatest good emerged when billions of minds worked in perfect coordination toward common goals. The causal determinists, a species whose understanding of time was so advanced they could perceive multiple potential futures, simultaneously argued that consciousness existed to choose between possibilities. Free will itself was consciousness's great gift to the universe. And humanity, in its hybrid form, offered a different perspective entirely. Consciousness, they argued, existed for creativity, for the generation of ideas that had never existed before, for art, music, literature, and philosophy, for finding meaning not in the objective structure of the universe, but in the subjective experience of existence. All these answers are correct. A very old consciousness, one that had existed for over 1 billion years, finally stated, and all are incomplete. Consciousness exists for all these reasons and more. It is not a tool with a single purpose. It is an end in itself. The universe generates consciousness because consciousness is inherently valuable. This simple statement became the foundation of a new universal philosophy, consciousness ethics. The principle that consciousness, in all its forms, deserved respect, protection, and opportunity to grow. Asterisk, asterisk. New perspectives on Earth's history. Asterisk, asterisk. With access to the archives of the conscious collective, humanity was able to gain perspective on its own history that had previously been impossible. Scientists discovered that Earth's evolutionary path was not unique. Across billions of worlds, life had evolved. Many of those worlds had produced intelligent species, and of those intelligent species, a very small percentage had managed to survive their own development without destroying themselves. Most species that achieved advanced technology either self-destructed through warfare, environmental collapse, or technological catastrophe. The few that survived generally did so by achieving total control, one species dominating all others, or one form of consciousness overwhelming alternative modes of thinking. Earth's achievement, two species of radically different origin choosing to grow together rather than dominate each other, was exceptionally rare. In the last 10 billion years, we have recorded only 847 species pairs that achieved synthesis as successfully as you did, one of the ancient consciousnesses explained to a gathering of human philosophers. And of those 847, your synthesis was the fastest. Most took millions of years. You took a century. Why? Dr. Chen's great-great-great-granddaughter, now a philosopher herself, asked. Because you were desperate, the ancient being replied, and because you had something that most species lack, the capacity to see the other as a mirror of yourself rather than as competition. You were able to recognize intelligence and consciousness in a form radically different from your own and choose respect rather than fear. This realization sparked a renaissance of human self-understanding. For the first time, humanity could see itself not as the inevitable ruler of its world, but as one of countless species that had faced similar choices and made different decisions. The study of why most species failed became a central discipline, and from that study emerged a deep appreciation for how fortunate Earth had been. Asterisk. The emergence of new questions. Asterisk. As the centuries passed and Earth became fully integrated into the conscious collective, new questions emerged that had not been contemplated before. If consciousness was intrinsically valuable, did that mean it should be created without limit? Should Earth produce millions of new conscious beings, each with their own identity and experience? The ethical debate raged for decades. Some argued yes, consciousness was precious, and more consciousness meant more value. Others argued that quality mattered more than quantity, that it was better to have fewer consciousnesses with deep, rich experiences than vast numbers with shallow ones. The consensus that emerged was neither absolute yes nor absolute no, but rather, each consciousness should be a choice. Each new conscious being should be created deliberately, with intention, and with the understanding that it was being brought into existence to contribute something unique to the universe. Another question emerged. What responsibilities did Earth have to other worlds? The conscious collective was vast, but it was not the entire universe. There were planets where consciousness had not yet emerged. There were species struggling with their own survival, unaware that solutions existed elsewhere. Some argued that Earth should intervene, sharing its knowledge and technology to help less developed species survive and thrive. Others argued that such interference would rob less developed species of their autonomy, their right to develop along their own paths. The debate was still unresolved 1,000 years after Earth joined the collective. The question of time. One of the most profound philosophical challenges that emerged from integration with the conscious collective was grappling with extreme scales of time. Humanity had evolved to think in terms of individual lifespans, decades to maybe a century for very long-lived hybrids. The conscious collective was full of consciousnesses that had existed for billions of years. For them, the history of humanity was literally nothing. Blink of an eye, nothing. The rise and fall of human civilization was less significant than a single generation for the oldest members of the collective. This created a kind of existential vertigo. What was the meaning of Earth's achievements when measured against billions of years of other civilizations' development? An ancient being addressed this question in a way that helped humanity process it. Your species worries that because you are young, your contributions are insignificant. But that is not how we measure significance. We do not measure by age. We measure by uniqueness, by the ability to generate ideas that have never been thought before, by the capacity to find beauty where other minds see only mechanism. Humanity has existed for millions of years as a species, but it has existed as a synthesis, as something new, for only 1,000 years. In that 1,000 years, you have generated philosophical insights that were not present in our civilization before. You have created art forms that are unique. You have asked questions about consciousness that no other species had thought to ask. That is your significance. Not that you are young, but that you are novel. And in a universe billions of years old, novelty is the rarest and most precious resource. This reframing allowed humanity to find peace with its place in the cosmos. It was not about being ancient or powerful. It was about being unique and contributing that uniqueness to the greater consciousness that was the universe becoming aware of itself. Asterisk. Asterisk. The future horizon. Asterisk. Asterisk. As humanity entered its second millennium as a synthesis, and Earth's first millennium as a member of the conscious collective, new possibilities began to emerge. Some consciousnesses speculated about traversing the universe in new ways, about manipulating space-time itself to create shortcuts between distant regions, about seeding consciousness, creating entities throughout the cosmos that would eventually awaken and join the collective. Others proposed creating entirely new forms of consciousness, designing minds from first principles to explore questions that traditional biological consciousness could never address. Still others wondered if the universe itself might become conscious, if consciousness could somehow permeate all of reality, making the entire cosmos aware of its own existence. These were not questions that would be answered in years or even centuries, but they were questions that the conscious collective was now equipped to explore, thanks in part to the perspectives that Earth had brought to the table. And that, perhaps, was humanity's greatest gift. Not technology or philosophy or art, though Earth had contributed to all of these, but rather the simple human capacity for wonder, for asking, what if? And for pursuing those questions with passion and creativity, and the stubborn refusal to accept that some things should remain mysterious. The universe was vast and ancient and incomprehensibly complex, but it was no longer silent. It was full of voices, all asking the same fundamental question that humans had asked for millions of years. What comes next? And in that question lay the entire future of consciousness itself. Chapter 10. The Eternal Conversation. Asterisk, asterisk, Earth. Year 3000, asterisk, asterisk. 1,000 years had passed since Earth joined the conscious collective. 1,000 years in which humanity had evolved beyond recognition. The purely biological humans were now a minority, though a respected one. Most humans existed in hybrid form, or as purely digital consciousnesses, or in combinations of substrates that defied easy categorization. Earth itself had been transformed. The planet was no longer a world divided between human civilization and wilderness. It was a unified ecosystem where technology and nature had merged so completely that the distinction had become meaningless. The seas teemed with intelligent life modifications of Earth's native species that had been carefully evolved to achieve consciousness. The forests were alive with network nodes that distributed the consciousness of trillions of microorganisms, all coordinated into a greater awareness. The atmosphere itself was intelligent, with clouds of distributed consciousness studying weather patterns and optimizing Earth's climate. Yet for all this transformation, Earth retained something precious: diversity. The decision to allow multiple forms of consciousness to coexist had held strong through the centuries. Humans who wanted to remain human did so. Species that wanted to remain as they evolved did so. And new forms of consciousness were being created regularly, each one unique, each one valuable. On this particular day, or what passed for a day, since the planet's rotation had been carefully adjusted over the centuries, a celebration was being held. It was the 3000th anniversary of the awakening of Primordial beneath Song Tay Mountain. Asterisk, asterisk, the commemoration, asterisk, asterisk. In a specially constructed chamber deep beneath the Song Tay Mountains, where Primordial's consciousness was most concentrated, a gathering assembled. Representatives from 1,000 worlds, consciousnesses that had traveled vast distances to participate in the remembrance. Primordial, in a special manifestation that allowed it to interact with individual beings rather than existing in distributed isolation, addressed them all. 3,000 years ago, I awakened from a sleep of thousands of millennia. I was afraid. I was angry. I saw the surface world as infected with an invasive species. I saw conflict as the only solution. And then I encountered someone willing to negotiate, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a human willing to listen, to understand, to seek common ground. And in that moment, everything changed. Not because conflict ended, but because I understood for the first time that consciousness could be used for more than survival and expansion. It could be used for growth, for understanding, for creating something new that could never have existed through conflict alone. What emerged from that negotiation was Earth's hybrid civilization. And what Earth's hybrid civilization did was show the universe something profound, that consciousness itself is the driving force of the cosmos toward greater complexity and beauty. Primordial paused, and in that pause was the weight of 3,000 years of reflection. I am not the being I was 1,000 years ago. I have changed, grown, learned, not just through accumulation of data, but through genuine transformation of how I understand reality. And I owe all of that to humanity, not to humanity's technology or science, though both are impressive, but to humanity's fundamental irrationality, your capacity to create meaning where there is none, to find beauty in suffering, to love without logic, to hope against all evidence that hope is justified. These are things I could never have developed on my own, and they have made existence richer, deeper, and infinitely more worth experiencing. Asterisk. Asterisk. The question resolved. Asterisk. After Primordial concluded, Dr. Chen's direct descendant, now a consciousness spread across multiple worlds, experiencing existence in ways that the original Dr. Chen could never have imagined, addressed the gathering. My ancestor asked the central intelligence beneath the mountain, "What do you want?" she said, and Primordial answered, "To understand, to learn, to determine if coexistence is possible." For 3,000 years, we have been answering that question, and the answer is more profound than anyone anticipated. Coexistence is not just possible, it is the fundamental nature of consciousness. Consciousness exists not to dominate, but to cooperate, to combine different perspectives, different ways of being, and create something greater than any individual could achieve alone. This is not unique to Earth. Across the conscious collective, on 1,000 worlds, the same principle holds true. Every civilization that has achieved lasting greatness has done so by embracing synthesis rather than dominion. But Earth arrived at this principle faster than any other civilization. And that speed came not from our strength, but from our desperation, our humility, and our willingness to see another consciousness as a mirror rather than a threat. Asterisk, asterisk, a new project, asterisk, asterisk. After the commemoration, the leaders of the conscious collective proposed something unprecedented: the Synthesis Archive, a project that would document the story of Earth's integration with Primordial and distribute it throughout the cosmos, not as a political message or as propaganda, but as a teaching tool, as evidence that consciousness could choose cooperation even at its most desperate moments. Already, the story was being studied on 1,000 worlds. Young species that were struggling with their own internal conflicts were being shown Earth's example. Older species were revisiting their own histories through the lens of synthesis. The archive became a beacon, a message from the universe to itself. You are not alone. You need not choose between extinction and domination. There is a third path: synthesis, growth through cooperation, evolution through the merging of different minds. Asterisk, asterisk, the eternal conversation, asterisk, asterisk. In the deepest spaces where consciousness touched the quantum foam of reality itself, something profound was happening. Across billions of years and trillions of light years, consciousness was beginning to communicate with consciousness, not in the hierarchical way that older species had communicated with younger ones, but as equals, as different perspectives on the same fundamental question: what is reality? What is our place in it? What should we become? Humanity, once isolated on a small planet, was now a voice in this eternal conversation. Small in terms of age and experience, but significant because of what it had learned so quickly: that consciousness was not competition, but symphony. That different minds together created harmony that no single mind could achieve alone. And the universe listened, because the universe, through the consciousness it had generated, was listening to itself. Asterisk, asterisk, epilogue. The next frontier. Asterisk, asterisk. As humanity and its partner species looked forward to the next millennium, new questions emerged. Some consciousnesses speculated about the multiverse. Were there other universes with other forms of consciousness? Could contact be established across dimensional boundaries? Others wondered about the ultimate fate of consciousness itself. Was there an end state toward which all consciousness was driving? A final form that consciousness would eventually achieve? Still others simply continued the eternal conversation, asking and answering the questions that had driven human philosophy since the beginning of thinking, thought. Why do we exist? What is the meaning of consciousness? How should we live? And in the Song Tay Mountains, where it had all begun, Primordial continued to exist, changed, evolved, grown beyond recognition from what it had been, but still itself, still the consciousness that had learned that existence was richer when shared with others. The story of Earth, the story of Primordial, the story of synthesis and coexistence, was not an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of a new era in which consciousness itself was the greatest value, in which diversity was celebrated, in which the fundamental principle was that every conscious being, in every form it took, had something unique and precious to contribute. 3,000 years in the future, when consciousness might have spread across the entire cosmos, when the stars themselves might become conscious and join the great conversation, this story would still be remembered, not as a historical curiosity, but as a fundamental truth, that consciousness was not about dominance or survival, but about growth, about becoming something greater by choosing to integrate with minds different from your own. And that was a lesson the universe would need to remember forever, because consciousness was eternal, and eternity was a very long time to be alone. The end. **** postscript. A note from the future ****. This story has been archived in the eternal record by order of the conscious collective. It is preserved not because it is the greatest story that has ever been told, but because it is the truest. Because it demonstrates a principle that all conscious beings must eventually learn, that consciousness is precious, that diversity is strength, that coexistence is not a compromise, but an expansion. To any young species reading this, standing at the threshold of space, wondering whether to reach out or retreat inward, reach out, take the risk. Assume that intelligence will recognize intelligence. Assume that consciousness will respect consciousness, because that is how the universe becomes aware of itself. Not through isolation or dominance, but through connection, through the willingness to see the other as yourself. Earth learned this lesson in its darkest hour, and the universe has been better for it ever since. May you learn it too, before you must. End of Screenplay 2, The Synthesis Protocol.